Airplanes hold more than passengers and luggage. They hold secrets, judgments, and tensions that simmer just below the surface. On one particular flight, what seemed like a routine conflict became a spectacle, with an entire cabin convinced they were right to cheer for the wrong side. They thought they knew the story, thought they understood who deserved respect and who didn't, until a single moment flipped everything upside down and exposed truths none of them could have imagined. What unfolded in that cabin didn't just change lives. It forced an entire industry to confront itself. Watch closely as we peel back each layer. Hit like if you believe dignity should never be ignored. Subscribe for more stories that reveal the power of quiet strength. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from so I know who's with me as this story unfolds. The polished calm of the first-class cabin fractured the moment Linda Harper's palm connected with Monica Davis's cheek, a sharp crack echoing through the aircraft, as though it had been waiting for a stage and an audience. Caleb, Monica's 6-month-old son, startled by the violence, erupted into louder cries, his tiny fist trembling as his mother instinctively pulled him closer against her chest. The silence that followed was jagged, tense, pierced only by the infant's wailing and the quick shuffle of passengers reaching for their phones. Screens lit up like a constellation of judgment, hands angling for the best shot of what they already believed was righteous discipline. An elderly woman draped in pearls, her composure shaped by decades of unchallenged privilege, leaned toward her companion and whispered, "Finally, someone with backbone." Her words, soft yet heavy with bias, carried farther than she intended, emboldening the flight attendant as approving nods and murmurs spread like wildfire through the cabin. Linda straightened her navy blue uniform, the silver wings on her chest gleaming in the artificial glow above, and fixed her gaze on Monica with an expression equal parts disdain and triumph. Monica's cheek throbbed, not from the sting of physical pain, but from the sharp edge of public humiliation. Her dark eyes, however, did not break. They held steady, anchored by something far deeper than the indignity of the moment. She adjusted Caleb's blanket with trembling but deliberate hands, careful not to let him slip from her embrace, her boarding pass sliding forward in her lap. Its bold print read Mrs. M. Davis with a gold status indicator, a detail Linda had ignored once and seemed determined never to acknowledge. Around her, the passengers grew restless. Caleb's cries rose and fell, the sound meant to trigger empathy, but instead it irritated those too self-absorbed to see beyond their own discomfort. "Ladies and gentlemen," Linda declared loudly, as though orchestrating a scene for a gallery. She exaggerated her contrition, speaking over the baby's cries. "I apologize for the disruption. Some people simply don't understand appropriate travel etiquette." Her voice, tinged with performance, won immediate affirmation. A businessman in a sharp tailored suit, watch glinting beneath the lights, nodded in satisfaction. "Thank God someone is maintaining standards," he muttered just loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. "These people think they can do whatever they want." His words sliced through the air, a second assault more insidious than Linda's hand. Monica heard, but her only response was to gently bounce Caleb, whispering soothing tones into his ear. Caleb's tiny fingers curled around hers, a grasp of trust that should have softened hardened eyes, but only provoked more disapproval. Linda, sensing the tide of judgment in her favor, reached for her radio with exaggerated precision, her movements choreographed for effect. "Captain Keller, we have a code yellow in first class. Disruptive passenger with infant, refusing to comply with crew instructions." The radio crackled with the captain's even reply. "Copy that, Linda. How do you want to proceed?" She smirked, savoring the control, and looked down at Monica, as though she were vermin trespassing in a polished world. "I recommend immediate removal before departure. She's already delayed us 8 minutes with this tantrum." Monica's phone, resting silently on her tray table, lit up with a countdown. 14 minutes until departure. Beneath it, a message glowed. Corporate legal merger announcement. 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. All systems ready. Monica's hand slid the device quickly back into her bag, shielding it from Linda's scrutinizing eyes. She finally spoke, her voice steady but quiet, words nearly drowned out by Caleb's soft whimpers. "My ticket shows seat 2A. I paid for first-class service, and I'd appreciate." Her sentence was abruptly cut short by Linda's derisive laugh, sharp and rehearsed, punctuated by the chuckles of passengers who had already cast judgment. "Honey, I don't care what scam you pulled to get that ticket. People like you always try to upgrade illegally. I know every trick in the book." A young woman across the aisle, perhaps college-aged, lifted her phone higher, whispering into her live stream, "Y'all, this is insane. The flight attendant just slapped a mom with a baby. I can't even." The viewer count climbed by the hundreds, then thousands, yet the commentary was unforgiving. Finally, someone disciplining bad parents. "That mom looks entitled AF. Why can't people control their kids on flights?" Each toxic judgment scrolled across the screen, strangers becoming jury and executioner without context or conscience. Monica absorbed it silently, her face a mask of quiet resilience. Linda, emboldened, played her role further. "Ma'am, if you can't manage your child appropriately, I have every right to request your removal from this aircraft. Airline policy is clear about disruptive passengers." Monica bent slightly, reaching into her carry-on for Caleb's formula, her movements calm, unhurried. But as she did, the glint of a platinum-colored card slipped briefly into view before being tucked back into the folds of diapers and bottles. Its shine was distinct, unlike standard loyalty cards, though most were too blinded by prejudice to notice. A passenger near her narrowed his eyes but said nothing. Moments later, Monica's phone buzzed again. This time, the screen flashed Aerostar Airways' executive office before she declined the call with a simple press of her thumb. Linda's eyes narrowed into a predator's glare. "Who exactly do you think you're calling? Your baby daddy isn't going to save you from federal aviation regulations." The insult was met with approving chuckles from the audience, validation fueling her arrogance. Monica's shoulders rose with a quiet breath as she kissed Caleb's forehead, her lips brushing his warm skin. She said nothing, not a word in defense, not a plea for sympathy. Silence, in her case, was a strategy, one the others mistook for weakness. "Honey," Linda sneered with mocking sweetness, "you're not fooling me with that ticket. I've seen your kind pull every scam in the book, printing fake confirmations, flashing borrowed passes. People like you never stop trying to sneak into first class." She folded her arms, scanning the rows of affluent faces around her as though inviting them to nod in agreement. And many did. Monica's eyes flicked briefly toward her lap, the gold status pass glinting faintly against the overhead lights, a fact that should have silenced Linda, but only sharpened her resolve to humiliate. The elderly woman in pearls raised her voice from across the aisle, abandoning whispers for bold condemnation. "In my day, parents knew how to travel properly with children. This display is shameful. It's bad enough to bring a crying baby onto a plane, but to argue with the crew? Unacceptable." Her words struck the air with finality, each syllable landing as another stone on Monica's shoulders. She rocked Caleb gently, his cries softening as he nestled closer, but the judgment continued unabated. A businessman in a polished suit leaned forward, his voice deliberately loud. "Some of us have important business meetings. We pay thousands for peace and order up here, not tantrums. Every minute wasted on this nonsense costs real money." He adjusted his watch deliberately, as if his time itself were a currency Monica was depleting by existing in their presence. The passengers nodded in agreement, faces tightening with irritation, convinced that they were enduring an inconvenience caused solely by the mother and her infant. Linda seized on the momentum, her expression triumphant. "You hear that, ma'am? You're holding up 180 passengers. People who have actual obligations. People who matter." Monica's cheek still burned faintly from the slap, but she kept her composure, her steady eyes betraying neither anger nor submission. The restraint puzzled a few, but most dismissed it as defeat, the quiet resignation of someone who knew she would soon be dragged from her seat. Linda pressed her radio button again, her voice ringing with arrogance. "Captain Keller, I am confirming. Passenger remains non-compliant and continues to disrupt. Recommend immediate removal by security before takeoff. Time is being wasted." The crackle of response was immediate. "Copy, Linda. Ground security will be standing by." The word spread a ripple of satisfaction through the cabin. The thought of seeing Monica escorted off the aircraft seemed to please the audience. passengers adjusting their phones to capture what they assumed would be the final humiliation. A young woman live streaming whispered into her camera, "Y'all, they're about to drag her off. This is wild." Comments exploded in real time, viewers cheering the crew on, celebrating the discipline of what they described as an entitled mother. Monica looked down at Caleb, kissed his forehead softly, and whispered reassurance too quiet for the microphones around her to capture. Caleb cooed, his cries fading as his mother's steady presence enveloped him, a calm that only deepened the contrast between her dignity and the ugliness around her. The businessman scoffed at the sight, muttering, "Pathetic. She acts like this is some kind of noble struggle. She's just wasting everyone's time." His words were met with approving nods, the groupthink of first class hardening into open hostility. Phones recorded every moment, screens reflecting faces twisted with disdain. The evidence they thought they were gathering was not against Linda, not against themselves, but against Monica, the mother they had already judged guilty without trial. Linda leaned closer to Monica, her voice dropping into a venomous whisper, just audible enough for surrounding ears to catch. "You can cry into your baby's blanket all you want, but in a few minutes security will be here, and they'll haul you off this plane like the fraud you are. You should have known better than to think you belonged here." Monica did not flinch. Instead, she slowly adjusted Caleb's blanket again, her fingers brushing against a faint shine of the platinum card buried within her bag, a card Linda had ignored, a card the passengers had overlooked, a card whose significance would soon turn the entire performance upside down. But in that moment, the prejudice was unrelenting. The elderly woman sniffed disdainfully, adding, "This generation thinks they can buy respect. They don't understand it has to be earned." Monica's lips pressed together tightly, her silence deliberate, her composure steady as her phone buzzed once more with the insistent call from the Aerostar Airways executive office. She declined it with a calm flick of her thumb, ignoring the curious glance from the man across the aisle who had noticed the name on the screen. He opened his mouth as if to question it, then closed it again, unwilling to risk the disapproval of those around him. Linda straightened, raising her chin as though crowning herself queen of the cabin. 10 minutes, she announced loudly, her voice carrying the weight of finality. The crackle of response came without hesitation. "Copy, Linda. Proceed with protocol." The businessman in the tailored suit smirked as if the outcome had already been decided. "Good. About time someone enforces order around here," he muttered, tapping angrily at his phone, his impatience growing louder with every second. The elderly woman in pearls nodded approvingly, her voice carrying like a gavel. "Yes, yes. Do not let her hold us hostage with that noise. It's disgraceful." Around them, screens glowed brighter, phones recording every angle, capturing Monica's silence as if it were evidence of guilt. Comments on the young woman's live stream grew harsher, scrolling like a tide of condemnation. "Throw her off already. Entitled mom thinks rules don't apply. Why bring a baby if you can't control it?" The narrative had crystallized into a single storyline, Monica Davis as the disruptive intruder. Yet Monica's face remained calm, her arms swaying rhythmically to soothe Caleb, her composure unsettling in its steadiness. She glanced toward Linda, her voice steady but almost drowned by the restless passengers. "My ticket shows seat 2A. I purchased it lawfully. I deserve the service I paid for." Linda cut her off with exaggerated laughter, tilting her head back as though Monica had told the most absurd lie. "Sure you did. And I'm the Queen of England. You people always think you can trick the system, but not on my flight." Her tone dripped venom, her smile thin and cruel. The businessman leaned forward, eyes narrowing on Monica. "She's already wasted enough of our time. Captain Keller should have her dragged off right now. I have a connection. Some of us have actual responsibilities." His complaint was met with nods and mutters, an echo chamber of privilege reinforcing itself. The college student live, streaming, whispered breathlessly into her phone, "Y'all, this is about to blow up. They're calling security for real. This mom's getting kicked off before we even take off." Her viewer count climbed into the thousands, comments flying faster than she could read. Some cheered Linda's authority, Others mocked Monica's appearance, but a few hesitant voices questioned. Why is she so calm? Why does she look like she knows something? These doubts were drowned beneath the louder chorus of disdain, yet they lingered, faint but persistent. Linda, basking in her perceived power, leaned closer, her words sharp enough for nearby passengers to hear. "Ma'am, do yourself a favor. Get up now, and maybe you won't be banned from flying altogether. Don't make this worse than it already is." Monica kissed Caleb's forehead, her silence deliberate. She knew words at this moment would only feed their prejudice. She tightened her hold on her child, her eyes flicking briefly to the platinum card hidden within her bag, a secret that would turn their world upside down. But not yet. Timing mattered, and her patience was stronger than their arrogance. The cabin air grew heavier as Captain Keller's voice echoed over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for the delay. Please remain seated as crew resolves a passenger disturbance in first class." The announcement provoked immediate frustration. "Unbelievable," a woman muttered from row 3. "Throw her out already." "This is ridiculous," another voice snapped. Phones tilted higher, ready to capture the spectacle of removal. The businessman raised his phone like a judge recording evidence, confident the outcome was predetermined. Monica sat still, her phone buzzing once more, Aerostar Airways executive office flashing across the screen. She declined the call, her thumb steady, her expression unchanged. Linda caught the motion and sneered. "Who keeps calling you? Some boyfriend? He's not going to save you. Federal aviation law doesn't bend because you bat your eyelashes." Her words sparked chuckles, small but cruel. The elderly woman chimed in again, her voice dripping with disdain. "Young lady, respect authority. If you had any decency, you would leave now instead of wasting all our time." Linda grinned, emboldened by her chorus of approval, and spoke louder for the cabin. 10 minutes. That's all it will take for ground security to board and drag her off. And then maybe we can finally depart in peace." Monica's calm presence, however, unsettled the sharpest eyes. A businessman near the window frowned, tapping rapidly on his laptop. He began typing a post on an aviation forum titled, "Witnessing Discrimination in Real Time." His words spread quickly among insiders who recognized the subtle warning signs. A passenger too calm, a crew member too aggressive, a story that didn't fit neatly into the narrative being sold. Back in the cabin, Caleb's cries softened, his tiny fingers clutching Monica's thumb, his innocence shining in stark contrast to the bitterness around them. But instead of warming hearts, the sight seemed to harden them further. The businessman in the suit scoffed, "This is pathetic. She's trying to play the victim card. I'm done with this nonsense." Linda's radio buzzed again. "Captain Keller, confirmed security is standing by," she said with triumph. "Confirmed, Linda," the captain replied. "Security is prepared to board at your command." The passengers shifted with anticipation, phones ready to capture the climax, their judgment solidified. Monica's composure, her silence, her refusal to meet their hostility with anger confused them, but they mistook it for surrender. They did not see it for what it was: strategy, restraint, strength waiting for the precise moment to reveal itself. Linda turned to the cabin, her voice rising with self-importance. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. We will have this resolved shortly. Some passengers think rules don't apply, but on my flight, order is maintained." Applause broke out, weak but audible, feeding her arrogance further. The passengers continued their hushed commentary, their disdain emboldened by Linda Harper's loud declarations of authority, each whisper a thread weaving the same narrative: that Monica did not belong in first class, that she was a fraud clinging to a seat she had no right to occupy. Linda leaned forward with a smirk, her eyes glittering with contempt as she addressed Monica directly, her voice laced with venom. "I've seen all the tricks before. People like you think you can print a fancy-looking ticket and sneak into places where you don't belong. Not this time. Not on my flight." Her words rang sharp, eliciting chuckles from the businessman who had been her most vocal supporter, and a muttered "good riddance" from the elderly woman in pearls. Monica did not respond, her silence deliberate, her attention seemingly fixed on adjusting Caleb's blanket. Yet in that moment, something caught the cabin's light, a glimmer of silver gray that flashed as she reached into her carry-on bag to retrieve formula for her son. It was quick, subtle, almost hidden, but unmistakable to the sharpest eyes, a platinum-colored card. Its sleek design unlike the standard loyalty or frequent flyer cards passengers were used to seeing. She tucked it back quickly, sliding it between diapers and bottles before anyone could fully register what it was. But a few passengers caught the glimpse, their brows furrowing in curiosity. Linda, however, dismissed it entirely, her lips curling into another sneer. "Flashy cards don't impress me, sweetheart. Anyone can order a fake off the internet. You think some shiny piece of plastic is going to stop security from dragging you and your baby off this plane?" She turned slightly toward the cabin, raising her voice so others could hear, amplifying her contempt. She really thinks she can wave a card around and pretend she's somebody. A wave of snickers followed, the crowd eager to reinforce their prejudice. Monica ignored them, her calm unbroken, though her phone buzzed again with another insistent call. This time, the screen glowed brighter, and for just a moment the name was visible to those sitting nearby. Aristar Airways Executive Office. The businessman across the aisle leaned forward, squinting at the glowing screen, his eyes narrowing with recognition. He opened his mouth as though to question it, but Linda spoke first, her tone sharp and mocking. "Who exactly do you think you're calling? Your baby daddy? Maybe some cousin pretending to be important?" Newsflash: federal aviation law doesn't bend for desperate calls. No one's going to save you. The insult drew approving chuckles from the businessman in the suit and several others, their laughter thin and cruel. Monica declined the call silently, her thumb pressing with precision before slipping the phone back into her bag, her face calm and unreadable. The act unsettled one or two passengers who had noticed the name, but they said nothing, unwilling to risk stepping against the tide of majority judgment. Linda folded her arms, satisfied with the audience's approval, and tilted her chin upward as though crowning herself victor of the moment. 7 minutes until departure, she announced loudly, her voice carrying through the cabin. "Ground security is waiting, and we'll finally be rid of this nonsense. Some people just don't learn their place." Her declaration drew murmurs of agreement, though not everyone was convinced. A businessman near the window, still typing furiously on his laptop, posted another update to his aviation forum thread, writing that something felt wrong, that the passenger in question was far too calm, far too controlled, her silence deliberate rather than defeated. His words began to spread among industry insiders, whispers of doubt forming outside the sealed environment of the aircraft. Inside the cabin, however, the hostility remained sharp. The elderly woman leaned forward again, her eyes hard as stone. "I've flown for 60 years, and I've never seen such entitled behavior. In my day, children didn't cry like this on planes because parents actually knew how to raise them. This woman should be ashamed of herself." Monica adjusted Caleb in her arms, kissing his forehead softly, her eyes never rising to meet the hatred around her. Her calmness unnerved the keenest observers, though the majority mistook it for resignation. Linda, emboldened by the apparent silence, raised her radio again. "Captain Keller, confirm ground security is prepared." His voice came back sharp, efficient. "Confirmed, Linda. Officers are standing by to board." The words ignited another round of murmurs, passengers pulling out their phones eagerly, ready to capture the drama of Monica's removal. They shifted in their seats, leaning forward, their eyes trained on the mother and child as if they were an exhibit rather than human beings. But Monica's calm eyes betrayed nothing of fear, nothing of panic. Instead, she exhaled slowly, almost serenely, as if waiting for a moment known only to her. Linda, interpreting this calm as weakness, leaned closer, her voice dripping with cruelty. "You're finished. In a few minutes, you'll be escorted off in front of everyone, and maybe next time you'll think twice before pretending to belong somewhere you clearly don't." Monica's lips parted, and for the second time since boarding she spoke, her voice quiet but steady, her tone carrying a weight that made the closest passengers still slightly. "Ma'am, I understand you believe you're following protocol, but I suggest verifying my status before you make a decision you can't take back. Linda recoiled as though slapped, her laughter sharp and brittle. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your cooperation," she announced, smiling tightly, as if she had personally saved the flight from chaos. "We apologize for this disruption, but we will have this resolved shortly. Security is on the way." The passengers responded in kind, nodding, muttering, and whispering with relief and anticipation. The businessman in the suit leaned toward the aisle, raising his voice so that the cameras recording nearby would capture his indignation. "I cannot believe we're being delayed because of this. I've flown for years, and I've never seen such disrespect for the crew. She thinks she can hold up 180 people just because she refuses to follow the rules. Pathetic." His words won immediate support from several nearby passengers. The elderly woman in pearls, still simmering with disdain, shook her head emphatically. This is what happens when people think the rules don't apply to them. No respect for authority, no sense of dignity. It's outrageous. Her words spread like poison through the cabin, the agreement from others layering judgment upon judgment until the pressure against Monica became nearly suffocating. Yet Monica remained still, her eyes calm, her lips pressed together as though holding back a truth that none of them were prepared to hear. Her phone buzzed again with another call, Aerostar Airways Executive Office, glowing across the screen before she declined it silently. A few passengers who caught the name looked puzzled but remained silent, unwilling to challenge the dominant narrative forming around them. Linda noticed the call but brushed it off with another mocking sneer. "Still clinging to those fake calls, are you? You really think you can trick us into believing you're important? Newsflash, sweetheart. Security doesn't care who you pretend to know." Her words earned more laughter, passengers shaking their heads as though Monica's quiet restraint were proof of her guilt. A young man 2 rows back lifted his phone higher, speaking into his live stream. "Y'all, this mom is wild. She keeps getting calls from some office and acting all calm like she's untouchable. This is hilarious. Wait till they drag her off." His viewer count surged into the tens of thousands, the incident spreading beyond the aircraft as social media thrived on the drama. The comments were merciless, entitled "Mom Alert," "Throw her off already," "That flight attendant is a hero." Only a handful questioned the calmness of Monica's demeanor, writing things like, "Why does she look so unbothered?" or "She's too composed for someone about to be dragged off." But these quieter doubts were drowned beneath the noise of majority judgment. Linda raised her radio again, her tone sharper, more triumphant than ever. "Captain Keller, passengers still uncooperative. I'm formally requesting immediate removal." The captain's voice came through the crackle of the radio, curt and final. "Copy, Linda. Security will board as soon as the cabin is ready." The announcement sent a ripple of excitement through the passengers, many adjusting their phones, preparing to capture what they assumed would be the dramatic climax. The businessman rubbed his hands together with satisfaction, muttering, "Finally, order will be restored." The elderly woman folded her arms tightly, her lips curling into a smile of vindication. Good. Let this be a lesson for her. She thought she could waltz in here and defy the rules. Now she'll see what happens when people put her in her place. Around them, others nodded in agreement, some speaking into phones to friends and family, updating them on the crazy scene unfolding on board. Their words, dripping with contempt, painted Monica as the villain in a play she had not auditioned for. Monica adjusted Caleb in her arms, kissing his forehead softly as his small hand clutched her finger. Her calm was unshaken, her silence steady, though every insult pressed like a stone against her dignity. Still, she did not yield to anger or fear. Instead, her composure grew stronger, her quietness almost eerie to the sharpest observers. A businessman near the window, who had been typing furiously on his laptop, frowned as he studied the glow of his screen. His aviation forum post had begun to gain traction, dozens of responses pouring in from industry professionals who recognized that something felt wrong. "Passenger shows no signs of distress," he typed. "Too calm, too controlled. Crew member escalating unnecessarily. Possible discrimination incident unfolding." His words, though typed quietly, carried weight outside the aircraft, but inside the cabin they went unnoticed, drowned by the mob's hostility. Linda turned toward Monica again, her eyes flashing with arrogance. "You're done here. Security will be here any moment, and you'll be out of this cabin, out of this plane, and probably banned from flying ever again. Maybe next time you'll remember that rules exist for a reason." Monica finally lifted her gaze, her dark eyes meeting Linda's with steady resolve. Her voice was quiet but firm, carrying just enough weight for those nearby to hear. "Be very careful, ma'am. Some decisions cannot be undone." The words unsettled the closest passengers, though they dismissed the warning as desperation. Linda laughed harshly, brushing off the remark with a wave of her hand. "The only thing you've undone is your chance to stay on this flight. Security will make sure of that." She turned toward the cabin once more, playing to her audience like a performer closing a scene. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. I assure you, this disruption will be resolved shortly, and we can finally be on our way." Applause rippled faintly through the cabin, fueled less by genuine gratitude and more by eagerness to see the curtain fall on Monica's humiliation. The businessman in the suit clapped once, satisfied, and muttered to no one in particular, "Finally, someone taking action." The elderly woman in pearls nodded approvingly, her words dripping with scorn. "Good. Entitlement must be dealt with." The cabin bristled with impatience and arrogance, yet amidst the clamor, Monica sat unmoving, her arms wrapped protectively around Caleb, her composure intact. She kissed her child softly, whispering something inaudible, and for a fleeting moment her calm unsettled a few of the more observant passengers. They shifted in their seats, unable to explain why her silence did not resemble fear, but rather something far more deliberate. Captain Robert Keller strode down the aisle, his gold-striped shoulders gleaming beneath the cabin lights, his face carved with the practiced authority of 2 decades in aviation. His presence commanded immediate silence, passengers straightening, phones tilting to capture him as he stopped near Linda. "What's the situation here, Harper?" His tone was clipped, official, carrying the weight of regulation. Linda straightened, her chin lifted proudly. "Sir, this passenger has been disruptive since boarding. Infant screaming, refusal to follow crew instructions, and now outright refusal to deplane voluntarily. I recommend immediate removal." The captain studied Monica with a practiced eye, noting her calm expression, her designer diaper bag at her feet, her gold boarding pass in her lap. Yet his assumptions aligned easily with Linda's narrative. "Ma'am," he said, his voice booming with authority, "federal aviation regulations require compliance with crew instructions. Failure to comply may result in removal from this aircraft and possible federal penalties." Passengers nodded vigorously, their faces etched with impatience and superiority. The businessman muttered, "There we go. Now she'll finally be put in her place." The young woman filming whispered into her phone, "Oh my God, the captain's here now. This is getting real. She's about to get arrested. Watch this." Viewer counts surged on her live stream, tens of thousands joining, the comments flowing in rapid-fire judgment. "She's toast. Bye, Felicia. Hope they ban her forever." Monica remained calm, her only movement the gentle rhythm of bouncing Caleb. She glanced briefly at her watch, its plain design belying the inscription hidden on the back. "To my brilliant wife, AD 7 minutes until departure," she noted silently. Her phone buzzed again, Aerostar Airways Executive Office flashing across the screen. She declined it without hesitation. Captain Keller narrowed his eyes. "Ma'am, whatever call you think you're waiting for doesn't override federal safety protocols. You need to comply right now." From a galley, 2 federal air marshals emerged, plain clothes but unmistakable to anyone who recognized their stance and their cautious watchfulness. The sight of them sent a murmur of satisfaction through the passengers. "Yes, finally," someone muttered. "Drag her out already." Linda smiled smugly, gesturing toward Monica. "Gentlemen, this is our disruptive passenger. She's refused every instruction. She's holding up this entire flight." Air Marshal Rodriguez approached carefully, his voice calm but firm. "Ma'am, we need you to gather your belongings and come with us voluntarily. Non-compliance could escalate this situation unnecessarily." Monica looked up, her gaze steady, her voice soft yet unyielding. "I need exactly 5 more minutes to resolve the situation." Her words rippled across the cabin, confusion striking those who heard. Passengers leaned forward, whispering among themselves. 5 minutes? Who does she think she is? She has no choice here. The businessman barked angrily. "You need 0 minutes, lady. You're done. Some of us have places to be." Captain Keller's patience thinned, his face flushed with irritation. "You have no authority here," he snapped. "This is a federal aircraft under my command. You are creating a safety hazard, and you will be removed immediately." Linda seized the moment, her voice triumphant. "This is exactly why we have protocols, Captain. Some passengers think they can manipulate situations with fake emergencies, but they cannot. Not here." Her words were met with a ripple of applause and nods, passengers applauding her firmness, as though she were protecting them personally from chaos. The live streams exploded with comments celebrating her authority, mocking Monica's calmness, painting her as delusional. Monica pressed her lips to Caleb's forehead, her whisper too soft for the recordings to capture. Her phone buzzed again, her finger hovering over it, her eyes calm, deliberate. She looked up at the marshals, her voice even. "Some actions cannot be undone. You may want to verify my status before you proceed further." Rodriguez hesitated, glancing at his partner Johnson, his instincts telling him something was off. "Captain, if she has documentation." "No," Keller cut him off sharply, his voice final. "We don't negotiate with disruptive passengers. Remove her now." He looked at Linda, nodding with authority. Linda's eyes glittered with victory, her lips curling into a smile as she stepped closer. "You hear that? You're finished. Your little performance is over." She gestured toward Monica with relish. Air Marshal Rodriguez and his partner Johnson moved closer, their presence heavy, their intent unmistakable, and the crowd hummed with anticipation, convinced they were witnessing the end of Monica's defiance. Monica sat unmoving, her arms wrapped firmly around Caleb, her composure unshaken. She kissed her son's head softly, then reached calmly into her bag, pulling her phone into the open for all to see. Her finger hovered deliberately before pressing a single contact, her voice quiet but audible enough to be captured by dozens of recording devices. "Hi, honey," she said softly into the phone, her tone calm and intimate. "I'm having some trouble on your airline." The cabin froze. For a heartbeat, silence overtook the chatter, the passengers frowning in confusion at her phrasing. Then, the speaker crackled with a voice so familiar that every crew member in uniform stiffened instinctively, their blood running cold. "Which aircraft, sweetheart?" the voice asked, rich with authority, low and commanding. "I'll handle this personally." Captain Keller's face drained of color as recognition struck him like a blow. He knew that voice. Every pilot at Aerostar Airways knew that voice. It was the voice of Anthony Davis, Chief Executive Officer of the entire airline, the man who signed their paychecks, the man who had power over every certificate, every career, every decision in the company. The passengers blinked in shock, processing what they were hearing, their murmurs rising into a wave of disbelief. Monica responded with calm precision, her words deliberate. "Flight 847, first class. The crew is being creative with customer service." Her tone carried an edge of understated irony, and the moment she said it, the cabin erupted into stunned whispers. The businessman who had been the loudest in condemning her lowered his phone slowly, his smug smile collapsing into slack-jawed astonishment. The elderly woman in pearls covered her mouth, her eyes darting nervously between Monica and Linda. The live streams exploded with comments so fast the words blurred on screens. "Wait, her husband is the CEO. No way, this is insane. Plot twist of the century." On the other end of the line, Anthony Davis's voice hardened into steel. "Everyone on that aircraft needs to step back for my wife immediately." The command carried the weight of corporate authority, reverberating through the cabin like a verdict. Linda's face went ghostly white, her confident smile shattering as the full reality crashed down upon her. She stumbled backward, her lips parting in disbelief. No, this isn't possible. She's just a passenger. She's my wife." Anthony's voice cut through, sharp and merciless. "And she is holding our son. You put a hand on her again, and it won't just be your job on the line. It will be your freedom." The silence that followed was suffocating, the weight of authority crushing the arrogance that had filled the cabin only moments before. Passengers who had been cheering Linda now sank back in their seats, their phones trembling as they realized the significance of what they had recorded. The young woman who had been live streaming whispered shakily into her phone, "Oh my God, she's the CEO's wife. Everyone's getting fired." Her viewer count skyrocketed past 40,000, comments flooding faster than she could scroll. "This is unreal. She just flipped the whole plane. That flight attendant is finished." Captain Keller staggered back a step, his authority evaporating. His voice, once firm and commanding, cracked with desperation. "Mr. Davis, sir, there must be some misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" Anthony Davis's voice boomed from the speaker, icy and cutting. "I'm watching a live stream right now. I just saw my wife get slapped by one of your crew members. 50,000 people saw it too. Do you call that a misunderstanding?" Linda's knees weakened, her hands trembling as she shook her head violently. No, this can't be real. I didn't know who she was." Her words rang hollow, collapsing under the weight of the truth. Monica looked up at Linda, her voice calm, her words precise. "That was the point, wasn't it? To see how you treat passengers when you don't know who they are." The businessman in the suit who had mocked Monica moments earlier sank into a seat, his face paling as he realized his own recorded words would soon resurface, tied forever to a public scandal. The elderly woman in pearls clutched her handbag tightly, her own judgment now a noose tightening around her dignity. The air marshals stepped back cautiously, their eyes darting between Monica and the phone speaker, their professional instincts telling them they had crossed into dangerous territory. Anthony's voice continued, cold and unforgiving. "Captain Keller, Miss Harper, you've both just made career-ending decisions. This is no longer about protocol. This is about assault, discrimination, and federal liability. And I assure you, there will be consequences." The passengers sat in stunned silence, every eye fixed on Monica, the woman they had mocked and condemned, now revealed as the most powerful person in the cabin. Caleb gurgled softly in her arms, oblivious to the seismic shift his presence had triggered, his innocence a stark contrast to the shame consuming those around him. Monica's calm demeanor had finally found its explanation, her silence revealed not as weakness, but as strength rooted in certainty. She had been waiting for this moment, allowing arrogance to build, letting judgment pile high until the truth came crashing down like a hammer. The young woman streaming spoke again, her voice trembling with excitement. "Y'all, I can't believe what I'm seeing. The mom they were about to kick off is literally the CEO's wife. This flight attendant is done. The captain is done. Everyone is done." Viewer counts soared past 50,000. The comments a tidal wave of shock and fury. "This is legendary. Accountability live. Power shift." The businessman near the window, who had been typing on his aviation forum, stopped mid-sentence, his hands frozen over the keys. He deleted his post in silence, then began typing again, his new words blazing across the forum. "Skylink Flight 847 crew just assaulted the CEO's wife on livestream." Captain Robert Keller's hands trembled slightly as he clutched his radio, his authority shattered in real time, his face flushed with the recognition that his career was slipping away with each second Anthony's voice filled the cabin. Linda Harper pressed herself against the galley wall, her silver wings catching the light, but no longer symbols of honor. They looked instead like cheap trinkets about to be stripped away. "Mr. Davis," Keller began weakly, his tone grasping for dignity. "Sir, emotions ran high, mistakes were made, but surely. Anthony's voice cut him down like a blade. "Captain Keller, there is no surely. 50,000 people are watching this incident live. I have executives and federal contacts watching right now from my office. You and your crew physically assaulted my wife, attempted to remove her unlawfully, and humiliated her in front of the entire cabin. That isn't a mistake. That's systemic arrogance. And it ends today." The murmurs in the cabin swelled, passengers exchanging panicked looks, phones trembling as they continued to record, some guiltily lowering their screens as they realized their own approving comments had been captured as part of the scandal. The young woman live streaming gasped, her voice carrying over her phone's mic, "Oh my God, y'all, he just confirmed it. The CEO himself is watching this live. This is insane. They're finished." The comment section erupted with hysteria. "This is historic. They're all getting fired." She played the long game perfectly. Monica shifted Caleb in her arms, her composure unbroken, her eyes calm, as though she had known this script would unfold all along. Anthony's voice continued, colder now, clinical in its precision. "Linda Harper," he said, pronouncing her name like a verdict. "You physically struck my wife while she was holding our infant son. Do you understand what that means? Federal law defines assault on an aircraft as a felony with mandatory prison time. You are finished." Linda shook her head wildly, her voice cracking under the weight of the truth. No, I didn't know who she was. I thought she was just what?" Anthony interrupted with deadly calm. "Just a mother with a crying child? Just a black woman you assumed didn't belong in first class? Please continue. I have my legal team recording every word." Monica's eyes lifted briefly, her voice soft but steady. "That was the point, wasn't it? To show how passengers are treated when assumptions are made. You didn't care about policy. You cared about humiliating me." The words echoed undeniable, their truth striking deeper than any physical blow. Captain Keller tried once more, desperation threading his voice. "Mr. Davis, if we could just resolve this privately, away from the cameras." Anthony laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "Privately? Captain, you have 50,000 people watching your actions live, and every one of them just witnessed your crew attempt to cover up discrimination. The time for privacy ended the second my wife was assaulted in public." The businessman in the tailored suit sank into a seat, his earlier arrogance draining into panic as he realized his comments had been streamed and recorded. The elderly woman in pearls clutched her bag tightly, her face pale as the implications of her public scorn settled in. The air marshals shifted uneasily, stepping back with their hands raised slightly. Rodriguez spoke carefully, his tone cautious. "Mr. Davis, sir, we acted on crew reports. We didn't know her identity. We were following protocol." Anthony's voice softened slightly, though the edge remained. "Agent Rodriguez, I don't fault you for following procedure, but those procedures rely on the honesty of crew members. And today, those crew members lied. They abused authority. They discriminated. That is the real threat to passenger safety." Monica reached into her carry-on and withdrew the platinum card she had tucked away earlier, holding it up for the cameras still recording. The embossed lettering gleamed under the cabin lights. "Mrs. Anthony Davis, First Family." Gasps erupted across the cabin, passengers recoiling as though the card itself carried the weight of justice. Several lowered their phones in shame, their earlier insults flashing in their minds, their complicity undeniable. Monica's voice carried across the stunned silence, calm but powerful. "You wanted to see proof. Here it is. But proof was never the issue. The issue was your assumption that I didn't belong." The cabin's energy shifted, the arrogance draining into fear. The young woman filming whispered into her phone, her hands trembling. "Y'all, she just showed her card. It's real. She's really the CEO's wife. Oh my God, this is bigger than anyone thought." The viewer count spiked again, tens of thousands more flooding in to witness the spectacle. Anthony's voice thundered from the phone once more. "Captain Keller, Linda Harper, both of you are suspended effective immediately. You will face federal investigation and corporate review. You endangered passengers, assaulted my wife, and damaged this airline's reputation in ways you cannot possibly comprehend." Keller's face sagged with despair, his 22-year career dissolving in seconds. Linda slumped against the galley, tears streaking down her face as her reality collapsed. The passengers sat in suffocating silence, their judgment now turned inward, the shame of their complicity gnawing at them. The businessman typed frantically on his laptop, rewriting his aviation forum post with urgency. "Breaking. Aristar Airways crew assaults CEO's wife. Federal investigation underway. Stock drop inevitable. His words raced across the industry, the scandal spreading faster than the aircraft's Wi-Fi could handle. The businessman who had mocked Monica Davis minutes earlier deleted his video in a panic, though it was too late. Screenshots of his smug remarks already circulated online, his arrogance immortalized in digital stone. The elderly woman in pearls avoided Monica's gaze, her hands trembling as she clutched the strap of her handbag, her earlier disdain now boomeranging back as guilt. Linda Harper stood pale and shaking, her silver wings catching the dim light not as a badge of honor, but as a symbol of her downfall. Her earlier triumph had evaporated, replaced by a dawning terror of what came next. Captain Keller fumbled with his radio, his voice cracking as he tried to salvage control. "Mr. Davis, sir, I assure you this was not reflective of our airline's values. If we could discuss this through internal channels. Anthony's voice thundered back through the speakerphone, sharp and cold. There are no internal channels when 50,000 people are watching a felony unfold in real time. Privacy ended the moment you allowed my wife to be assaulted under your command. Every second of this is evidence, and the world is witnessing it live." Keller's face crumpled, the final vestiges of his authority collapsing, his 22 years of service rendered meaningless against the tidal wave of accountability sweeping through the cabin. Monica sat composed, Caleb nestled quietly in her arms, the calm center of the storm that had consumed the flight. She looked at Linda, her voice soft but devastating in its precision. "You made a choice to strike me, to mock me, to threaten me in front of my child. Choices have consequences, and those consequences have arrived." Linda shook her head violently, tears streaming down her face. "Please, I didn't know. I thought you were." Monica cut her off with quiet finality. "Exactly. You thought you knew what kind of person I was because of how I looked, because of the color of my skin, because I was holding a crying baby. That was enough for you. That was all you needed to justify cruelty." Her words hit harder than Anthony's booming authority, the truth undeniable, piercing through the silence like a blade. Passengers shifted uncomfortably in their seats, shame heavy in their throats. The businessman groaned softly as he realized his comments were captured on multiple recordings. The young woman still live streaming whispered shakily to her audience, "Y'all, she just told the truth. This is about discrimination. Everyone here judged her without knowing. We're all guilty." Her viewer count soared past 60,000, the comment section exploding with outrage. "Fire them all. Sue them into the ground. Respect mothers, respect families." Anthony's voice returned, colder than before. "Effective immediately, Captain Keller. You are relieved of duty. Linda Harper, you are terminated. Both of you will face federal charges: assault, discrimination, child endangerment. The Department of Justice will be notified before this aircraft even departs." Keller staggered backward, the words slicing through him with merciless finality. His stripes, once symbols of command, now hung like shackles dragging him toward disgrace. Linda collapsed into the jump seat, her hands shaking uncontrollably, her mind racing with the realization that her career, her livelihood, her freedom were unraveling in front of tens of thousands of witnesses. The passengers sat frozen, every face reflecting the awareness that they had not simply witnessed history but participated in it, many as accomplices who had cheered injustice. The young woman live streaming panned her phone across the cabin, her voice trembling. 70,000 people are watching this right now. This isn't just a scandal. This is the end of careers, the start of lawsuits, maybe even the start of new laws. In the background, Caleb gurgled softly. His innocent sounds a gentle reminder of the humanity at the center of the chaos. Monica kissed his head, her composure radiant, her dignity unshaken. Anthony's voice grew colder still. Federal investigators are already on their way to meet this aircraft upon landing. Flight 847 will not depart until every passenger has deplaned and the crew is placed into custody. There will be no cover-ups, no quiet settlements, no excuses. The world is watching and Aerostar will show accountability. The businessman with a laptop typed furiously, his aviation forum post now exploding with thousands of shares. Breaking: Aerostar CEO fires captain and flight attendant mid-flight after assault on his wife. Federal investigation confirmed. The stock markets buzzed with alerts, analysts scrambling to predict the fallout, news outlets interrupting broadcasts to report the scandal unfolding at 30,000 feet. Inside the cabin, shame pressed down harder than gravity. The elderly woman finally spoke, her voice trembling. I was wrong." Her words fell flat, too late, drowned by the enormity of what had already transpired. Monica looked at her briefly, her expression unreadable, then turned her gaze forward, her silence more condemning than any words could be. Linda sobbed quietly, her career and freedom dissolving before her eyes. Captain Keller stared into the void, his authority stripped bare, his decades of service irrelevant. Anthony's voice, resolute and merciless, delivered the final blow. "Every moment of this has been recorded. Every insult, every judgment, every act of violence. My wife remained calm, composed, dignified, while you mocked her, struck her, and tried to remove her. That contrast speaks for itself, and the consequences will be permanent." Caleb laughed suddenly, the pure, innocent sound cutting through the tension like sunlight through storm clouds. The passengers shifted, their shame deepening, the irony of the infant's joy highlighting the ugliness of their behavior. The live stream surged past 80,000 viewers, the comments unanimous in their condemnation of the crew and their admiration for Monica's composure. "She's a queen. Power and dignity." Captain Robert Keller slumped into a seat near the cockpit, his shoulders sagging under the crushing weight of a ruined legacy. 22 years of service erased in seconds. The passengers avoided each other's eyes, haunted by the knowledge that their voices, their applause, their insults had been captured forever, part of the evidence of prejudice laid bare for the world. The live stream surged past 90,000 viewers, the comments exploding with fury and praise, the tide of public opinion no longer in question. This is historic. This changes everything. Monica Davis is a symbol. Federal investigators boarded the aircraft within minutes, their presence commanding, their cameras flashing as they documented every detail. Linda and Keller were placed in restraints, escorted down the aisle under the glare of phones that once cheered their authority, but now recorded their disgrace. The elderly woman in pearls buried her face in her hands, her earlier condemnation of Monica replaying in her mind like a curse. The businessman in the suit slumped low, his arrogance collapsed into shame, his own words etched permanently into the narrative of discrimination exposed. Monica stood gracefully, Caleb resting peacefully against her chest, her expression calm, her dignity unbroken despite the storm that had surrounded her. Anthony's voice carried one final command through the phone. "Ladies and gentlemen, you have just witnessed the cost of arrogance and the power of truth. Aerostar Airways will change because of this. The industry will change because of this. And none of you will ever forget this day." The passengers deplaned in silence, each step heavy with the weight of their complicity, their minds replaying the moment they had cheered for cruelty without knowing the truth. News crews swarmed the tarmac, cameras capturing the sight of Linda and Keller being led away in handcuffs, their disgrace immortalized in headlines before they even reached the terminal. Within hours, the story dominated every channel, every feed, every paper. CEO's wife assaulted mid-flight. Airline scandal goes viral. Aerostar implements historic reforms. The fallout was swift and merciless. Stock prices dipped sharply before rebounding as Anthony Davis addressed shareholders in an emergency broadcast, his message clear and uncompromising. This company will no longer tolerate prejudice. We will no longer bury complaints. We will no longer protect those who abuse authority. Effective immediately, Aerostar Airways implements the Davis Standards, family protection protocols, mandatory bias training, and a passenger bill of rights. Every crew member will be accountable to the law and to the dignity of the people we serve. The announcement rippled across the industry, forcing rival airlines to scramble to implement similar policies lest they face their own viral scandal. Legislators praised the reforms. Civil rights groups rallied behind Monica as a symbol of resilience, and within months, federal law codified the new standards, ensuring no passenger would endure what she had endured. Monica herself avoided the spotlight, preferring quiet strength to loud celebration, but she became an icon nonetheless. Her calm composure in the face of humiliation, her refusal to lash out, her steady protection of Caleb became a model studied in business schools and leadership courses. Professors pointed to her as proof that dignity could be more powerful than rage, that silence could be louder than screams when timed with purpose. The college student whose live stream had captured the entire ordeal gained millions of followers overnight, her footage becoming the most watched viral clip of the year. She would go on to produce a documentary titled 35,000 Feet, Discrimination in the Sky, winning awards for exposing systemic injustice. The businessman who had mocked Monica vanished from public view, his comments replayed endlessly as cautionary tales. The elderly woman's words, once dripping with contempt, became a permanent example of prejudice, cited in speeches and seminars about implicit bias. Linda Harper faced trial for federal assault, her 8-year career reduced to a mugshot and a cautionary tale taught to every new flight attendant in the industry. Captain Keller lost his license, his pension, and his reputation, his name spoken in aviation circles as a warning about complicity and cowardice. But Monica's legacy was not one of vengeance. It was one of reform, of transformation, of dignity triumphing over arrogance. Anthony Davis stood beside her at press conferences, not as the CEO wielding power, but as the husband honoring his wife's strength. "My wife did not shout, did not fight, did not lash out," he said in one broadcast viewed by millions. She remained calm, dignified, and resolute. She showed the world that real strength is not in force, but in principle. That is the standard we will hold ourselves to as a company, and that is the standard the industry will follow. 2 years later, Flight 847 was studied in business schools, law courses, and leadership seminars across the globe. The Davis Standards became the foundation for international aviation law, protecting families, children, and vulnerable passengers in every corner of the world. The incident became known not only as a scandal, but as a turning point in the culture of air travel. The day when arrogance collapsed under the weight of accountability. The day when a mother's calm defiance changed an industry. Monica never sought fame, never craved recognition. She simply wanted to protect her son and hold her dignity. But her refusal to surrender to prejudice, her patience in waiting for the truth to emerge, turned her into something greater, a symbol of justice, a reminder that dignity and truth are weapons stronger than cruelty and lies. Caleb grew older never knowing the full ugliness of that day, but his laughter on the aircraft, his innocence in the middle of chaos, became a lasting reminder of why the fight for dignity mattered. The end. If this story moved you, take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. I'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think about the way this plot unfolded? And what part hit you the hardest? Tell me in the comments where you're watching from, because these stories reach further when we share them together.